welcome everyone again. Omowale David-Ashiru of Andela. She's Vice President of Global Operations at Andela. I'm actually going to start a little bit personal. Before you joined Andela, you spent 10 years at Accenture. So I'm curious about sort of the jump from consulting into sort of leading in a tech company.
But you missed out about 8 years of my life there. So running my own company, I've lived like 3 lives actually, or 4 lives. So that wasn't the first time I was making, a very different jump, going from management consulting to retail, producing and selling maternity things. So that was the first time I had to do that. And I mean, the only thing that's constant in life is change. You just adapt, you learn. I always say, this is me, I say school is overrated, not because I don't like school. I mean, I went to school and I did well, but I think school is overrated. Yes, you don't have to go to school to succeed, but you must always be a student. And so I believe I'm a student of life. So that's how I've been able to transition from, and then going from retail, running my own business, to Andela, the tech space. However, I must mention that in Accenture, I was working in business process reengineering and software implementation. So I wasn't completely new to technology. I did have that sort of background, yes, but not software engineering, definitely.
And so how was that? Tell me about your experience at Andela so far. You've been there for a very, very interesting period in the company's sort of life cycle. What is that experience been?
Right. I think I've been in Andela the most interesting time in Andela. Like, I've been there 2 years, just almost 2 years. In Andela, nuance, that's like 20 years, because with Andela, every day is like a year. A million things happen. So I think it's been arguably the most interesting 2 years of my life. Okay. Andela has phenomenal people, software engineers, and enterprise staff. Phenomenal in that, brilliant, obviously, because of obviously what we've been able to do, but the culture, amazing culture, so those are some of the things that I've experienced and I've enjoyed in Andela. Then the business of Andela, we have had to adapt and change. Andela is the definition of being agile, proactively, looking at what's happening and just tweaking, iterating. We've done that so many times. So you'd see us in the news all the time, one change after another, but we're constantly doing that, making sure that we can go on and achieve our goals.
Okay. So let's talk about that a little bit, sort of changing strategies. And it's been fascinating. I mean, I think the Andela journey has been really, really sort of interesting. There's a lot in the press, there's a lot of speculation. And I guess the question is, internally, how do you see the changing strategies? How do you look at the mission that you are on as a company and the way it's been refined? And how does it fit? Would you say you're still trying to accomplish the same goal, or has this goal itself specifically changed? How do you internally think about what is the core of Andela versus what is sort of a tactical shift to accomplish a bigger goal?
Okay, so I'm happy you've asked this question.
Yeah.
I think, and I mean, this is my observation and my opinion, and as a leader in the company, the North Star hasn't really changed. Or let me not call it the North Star. Let me say the problem we're trying to solve hasn't changed. What most people may not realize is Andela started because we're trying to fill a talent supply shortage, right? The world runs on technology. There are not enough software engineers. In North America, where we have a lot of the big technology companies, there's not enough talent, or there wasn't enough talent to meet their needs. And so Andela was trying to plug that gap, basically saying, look, there's talent, maybe not where you are, but there's talent everywhere, and we can plug that talent to opportunity. That's what Andela started off doing. That's what we're still doing, connecting talent to opportunity. And but the way we started, and again, of course, as a business, how you get to your North Star or how you achieve your goal definitely will always change. I always say that if you are the same way, even as an individual, if you're the same way you were 5 years ago, then you haven't grown. right? So you constantly change things. So we're still connecting talent to opportunity. Obviously, when we started off, one of the things that we realized is we could actually develop that talent. So develop the talent, train the talent, and then connect the talent to opportunity. Yeah. And we did that for almost 5 amazing years, and over 100,000 people went through.
No, those are two separate things. So 100,000 people through the fellowship or through sort of the entire sort of Andela training?
Yes. Okay. Let me get my figures right, and I will confirm. It's not the 100,000 I'm talking about. It's not people who have stayed and completed fellowship, but admitted into the fellowship. So people that have, come in, passed through. Some have stayed, some have left, some have. So that's, which is something else we do, and we'll continue to do in terms of training to introduce, learners to software. Thousands of people. Some things changed. One is, and I say this, when you start a business because you're trying to meet a need. Whose need? Your customer's needs. So you constantly, as a responsible business, you must always look and listen to your customers. And in 2019, one of the things that actually not just in 2019, we had started seeing that trend, was that the demand for junior software engineers, remote junior software engineers. So you must remember that our model is remote and district, right? So the demand for remote junior software engineers in the customers that we were, and there was more of a demand for experienced engineers for different reasons, into kind of things that we were doing in the bootcamp. Obviously, over the years in the US and everywhere, a lot of these bootcamps came up. And so a lot of junior talent, came up, and it was easier to just get a junior talent in your own city than a remote one. So that demand, brilliant software engineers who would be able to do work in their local community here in Nigeria, Kenya, wherever, but as a remote junior software engineer, we're not able to place them. So that was one of the things that we saw. Then aside from that, the model of where you're investing, and it was a lot of investment, over $20,000 in each engineer. You bring in people, you train them, you feed them, you accommodate them, you're doing all of that. And, but you're not getting any revenue from that, right? And so that model, having looked at it, we realized it wasn't going to be sustainable that way. It wasn't going to be sustainable because, one, in terms of impact, if you're trying to build over 100,000 software engineers or millions, there are only so many people you can bring into a physical location. So a model that would be more impactful would be something that it's not restricted to physical campus, right? Hence the ALC and things like that. And that would impact more people. It would be more cost efficient. As a business, you must always look at your costs. You must always. And you must be responsible. When people invest in you and trust you with cash and with money, you must be responsible for that, to focus now on getting experienced engineers and still connecting them to opportunity. Also bear in mind that having done that for 4 years, a number of the people who we started off with also are still coming in and being connected to opportunity.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about pipeline because there's an interesting kind of tension to what it is that you've just said. Initially, Andela did a lot of developing talent. And I mean, it started with fairly raw people and getting them up to sort of junior, mid-developer level. Now you're sourcing for senior level developers across Africa. Now, I work in a company that uses technology. We hire developers. We work in this. And I know that this is not a market that has, comparative to Asia, comparative to America, tons of them. Andela might be able to find enough today senior developers to sort of like build out its pipeline and sort of sustain its business. But long term, one of the ways you develop senior developers, and a senior developer is not just I worked for 10 years as a developer. I am now a senior developer. The quality of projects, the quality of structure, the quality of the teams that you work with, the demands of the client, all of that affects the development of sort of what makes a senior developer. So I have a question, is that long term, is this pipeline going to be filling fast enough? If Andela is not doing the work it was doing in terms of developing junior developers, if you're now in competition with startups, not just in Africa, but globally, who are sourcing from Africa through other ways, with African talent that's increasingly sort of just finding their own gigs on their own, whether it's Upwork or Fiverr or whatever it is. Long term, is there enough talent?
Let me start with, so long term, I believe what you said is true. Definitely, we need to continue training and developing software engineers. And by we, I don't mean just Andela.
Yeah.
that's an open field for a lot of people. It's something that Andela still will be doing via the ALC. That's not our core business because that's not where we're generating revenue, but it's something we will still be doing as part of our ALC as CSR. And I definitely agree, a number of people still need to do that. I think there has been a lot of focus training, and we have Chika, definitely, yes, we still need more of that. So you're absolutely right. We still need more of that. And we will do our part. And I expect that other folks will do their part to do that, to get that. And they're talking about connecting software engineers to opportunity. I know a lot of people, say it like, oh, and now you're just connecting experienced engineers to opportunities. But think about it, Tomba, who has done that before in Africa?
First of all, I don't believe there's no just business. There's no just anything in business. And to be clear, look, I'm going to ask, there are a few questions, and I think there are a lot of tough questions for Andela as a business, but tough questions notwithstanding, I think very few people will claim that Andela has not been a net positive for Africa, and not just a small net positive, but a pretty major net positive. I think the story, I think the development, I think the people who have gone through the fellowship all gained valuable experience. It's been a major boost for the ecosystem in multiple countries. So no question about that. There are questions though about sort of, I guess I can look at it on this hand. There's a couple of questions. One is business model. How does this business model get to sustainability? And how does it stabilize? And I think it's particularly critical of being a VC-funded business is interesting because you've now got to deliver VC quality returns somehow or the other. So that's a key question. But the second one is about the state of the developer ecosystem. And I think I hear your answer about Semicolon and Decagon and all the other sort of like training shops that are out there. They're doing the work. But again, they're doing the work at fairly sort of junior to mid-level. Building a senior developer is a lot more complicated and a lot more tasking and takes more time. And so I think there's an opportunity that we discussed in the office that I wanted to ask you about, which is India's built not just outsourcing, but also quite a number of dev shops. So doing direct development for people. And what's fantastic about that is if you're a dev shop, you have the opportunity to structure, you've got 100 junior engineers. You can structure them into teams in whatever way it is you can. You can stretch out your senior developers over a larger pool of people. And I think it's always been a curiosity of mine that Andela never looked in that sort of direction. Rather than just outsourcing the person, rather than giving the person to somebody else to work with, why not actually, well, we've got the resources, we've got the learning, we've got the skills. Why not build directly? And in that process, give your junior developers and your mid-level developers a path to seniority because they're working in a structured environment with people who understand what the client requires. Is that something that strategically ever got considered or no?
So it has come up a number of times. And I guess with business or with any company, you must know what your focus is. Right, you can't be all things to all men. I mean, they're brilliant million ideas. Andela could have developers that are trying to build, the next, iPhone and all of that. That is a solid business model. But that wasn't what Andela started out doing. Remember what I said. Andela started out connecting talent to opportunity. And as a business, you must understand what it is that you set out to do. Because every time obviously it doesn't mean you can't change. I mean, we've been changing. It doesn't mean that you can't diversify. But you must realize that every time you have resources are limited. You can either put your resources into what your core focus is, or split your resources into a number of things that are not your core focus. Okay. And that's disastrous. So yes, there is room to do that. And who knows, we may do that in the future. But this is what we started off doing. And like you said, VC money, this is what we have said we want to do. We need to show that we can actually do this profitably, and then obviously whatever thing comes up. And that was part of why we had to look at the model, because yes, the training was nice and it was impactful, but it wasn't the core business. It wasn't what you set out on pen and paper to say, this is what I'm going to do as a business to generate revenue and become profitable and scale.
Yep.
So that's, that's the short answer.
Okay. I think that's fair. I think that's fair. And that's a fair answer in terms of sort of deciding, what connecting talent to opportunity, that's our focus. That's where we're going to stick. But it is, that has always been a question that we've asked. So I guess coming back then to this sort of sustainability of, senior developers, the market, I think there's been a change in the way you work with people now. So you've opened up the network to all of Africa. So developers are welcome to apply. And basically, if I'm right about this, they're being remunerated per contract rather than being sort of on the bench, on the Andela bench. It's, we've got a contract, you fit it, and then we're going to pay you with that contract and you get paid once that contract starts. Is that correct?
Yes, that is. Yes. So we are having a blended model. Okay. We do have full-time employees and we do have contracts. So again, what we're trying to solve for is we have clients, we have customers, and we want to be able to give them the right talent at the right time. If that means we have to have a blended structure to do that, then we'll do that.
Gotcha. Okay. I think that's, all right. So I will take you off of the hot seat on those particular sort of set of questions, but I do have questions about sort of the VC model. And I mean, based on Andela's experiences so far, you guys have raised pretty significant VC funding. What's your sense of that in terms of building successful exits in Africa? You pivoted a number of times, you sort of tackled the changing winds. What are the biggest lessons you would say? If I told you tomorrow I'm about to raise a 20 million round into my startup, building whatever wonderful thing, what are the big lessons you would say are worth taking away from your experience?
Yeah, good question. So from our journey, which is sort of what I alluded to, for the first, I don't want to say half, but for most of our journey, we sort of didn't pay attention enough to the customer. Okay. At the end of the day, VC, investor, any kind of fund, they invest in you because you're a business that says you're going to do something for customers and, make money. And you must always make sure two things. One, product market fit is really, really key. And I think that's one of the things that has kept us, iterating and looking what's the model that gives us the best product market fit. To do that, you must listen to your customers. So I think for us, VC money is good. It gives you the runway that you need to scale, right? But you must constantly look at what's your product market fit? What is it that you are actually selling? And how do you make it the best quality? How do you do that? It's by listening to your customers. So that's one thing that I'd say we learned and we are learning and trying to do more of, because that's how we're going to be successful and be able to give the returns to those who have invested in us. So that's one critical thing that I would say that people looking to funding need to be clear on. It's not just money to do what you want or what you're passionate about. It's money to achieve a certain business goal, and you must constantly look at that and tweak as you need to make sure that you're meeting that goal.
I think an interesting thing about Andela is that because your primary goal is also from jump, you guys set out to serve Western markets. You have some of the challenges of working in Africa, which is sourcing talent, which is managing whatever the logistics and the issues are. But you you're also insulated, or you started out insulated. I think now you are working somewhat with African startups who are looking for talent. But initially, your primary market was the US, actually, which meant that from an economy perspective, which is one of the key concerns for a lot of startups working in Africa, which is this economy big enough to sustain the revenues we need to drive in order to give returns to a VC? That's a big question that Andela's never really had. I think the knock-on problem you've had, though, that I see is because you're serving the West, then you have to have sales infrastructure in the West. You have to have costs for that sales infrastructure in the West. And that remains still today, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So it's interesting because you kind of invert the problem, or you invert one of the key challenges. Instead of having the overweighting on the economy here, you have the overweighting in the costs, which you have to maintain in the West, which a lot of startups are able to avoid because they're building primarily in Africa. A majority of their cost base is here in Africa.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, I know that isn't very much, that isn't really a question. It's just something I was working out.
Yeah, it's a good one. Good observation.
So you mentioned product market fit, and is there a sense that you are there yet? Would you say that the results, you're seeing, and I know it's fairly early in this transformation, would you say that the results suggest that, look, this might be a fit, or do you need 6 more months, 9 more months, another year, before you evaluate and say, okay, this feels like we're in the right spot?
Yeah. To be honest, Tomiwa, we're still working on that. What I would say, 2019, obviously we had all these changes. September was when we really started, looking at this model and trying to work on it. And the plan was 2020, we're executing on this model. Everything is going to be great. We're going to, do this. Then COVID struck, right? And so COVID, the crisis, all of that. I mean, we are doing what we need to do. And I think we've been, better than most in terms of like our Q2 revenues. We hit that and surpassed it. I mean, obviously we had to revise, but we hit that and we're doing okay. But I think it's premature for us to say that we're there yet, mainly because for most of 2020, as with almost every other business, we've had to focus on the crisis and making sure that we not only survive, but we can thrive after that. So that's sort of like an interruption to your normal strategy. And I think this is the same with every other business. Everybody had plans for 2020. There's the interruption of COVID, and you need to sort of create a strategy to focus and deal with COVID and the pandemic, which isn't yet over. I mean, things are opening up, but it's not yet over. So yeah, so definitely it would be very premature for me to say, oh yes, we're there, we have the right product market fit. I think our going remote gives us a good advantage. Not that I think I know, it gives us a good advantage in terms of expansion, a larger talent pool, who can access us and who we can access, and all of that. But yeah, we're still in the same world that everyone is in, so premature.
Fair enough. Let me ask a question about the profit word. How, and just as much as you can say, how close are you guys to it? Is this a 2020 conversation? Is this a 2021 conversation? As much as you can say.
I think I can say two things. Okay. We're not yet profitable, and it's not a 2020 thing.
Okay. And in terms of investor expectations, how does that sit? And I mean, I know VCs are used to you could lose money for a few years as long as there's an exit or but it's frequently said that the expectations for African startups are different, that you will hit revenue faster, that you will get to sustainability faster. Does that apply, or at 181 million raised, you can take your time?
Yeah. The thing is, and I must give kudos to the board that we have and the investors. Well, I don't know, I can't really compare it to every other board, but I think we've had a very understanding board. The board members that we have are very diverse and people who are successful in their own right. That has helped us in terms of thinking, and and they understand. So they understand the tweaks, they understand the different things that we need to do. So we've had a very supportive board. I think to that extent, I would say the pressure probably isn't as much as some other places. Having said that, there's still investors, VCs, and there's a certain level, which is good, there's a certain level of corporate governance, risk management, returns that are expected within a time period, sustainability. So yes, that is there. We have that. We do have, our investors looking at that and pushing us. But I think that helps. I think it helps to keep us, accountable.
Fair enough. I'm just going to pause a little bit because quite a few people have joined this session since the beginning. If you're here, thank you for joining us. For this session, the hashtag is TC Live or TechCabal Live. If you have quotes, if there's anything that catches your attention, please share. If you have questions, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Please ask any questions in there. I'll be asking the questions for the next few minutes. But for the last 35 minutes, we'll take questions from the Q&A section. So if you do have questions, please share them. Okay, so I'm going to turn a little bit away from sort of these specific business sides to sort of a bit more operational. From a boots on the ground perspective, you've gone full remote, and you've talked about that. That's fantastic. In terms of senior executives on ground, I believe it's you, it's Wambui. You don't have country managers. Do you still have country managers, or no? That structure has been pulled.
No.
Any concerns about how that works in terms of sort of keeping a presence across the continent, still being felt as a business? Still, yeah. Any concerns about that, or strategies for dealing with that?
I wouldn't say concerns. You're right. It's a very different model. We're not focused on the country structure anymore because, again, that served a purpose. When you had a fellowship and you were talking about physical campuses and all of that, it made sense to have the country structure and all that. Now, with still connecting talent to opportunity, we can do more being open. Being remote, and giving access to everyone around the continent, and eventually globally, because it's not just about Africa. We started with Africa proudly, with Nigeria, but definitely the goal is always to be global. So I think the world itself is changing, and yes, so I believe that, and again, COVID has just sort of helped to accelerate that. People are now more open to the fact that remote work works. People don't have to be in a physical location with a certain physical presence. And you are absolutely right. Many years ago, say you're a company and they're like, where's your office? And you don't have anything. They're like, shady. But the world has moved on, right? And we've even seen that in the first few months of this, our customers, our clients are more open to remote work. This is what we've actually been preaching and been pushing for since we started. We've been at the forefront of remote distributed work. In fact, that's what we've been doing. Even though we had physical facilities, you need to remember that those engineers were basically working remotely with clients in North America, UK, wherever. So I see it less of a concern because of the way the world is progressing. The future of the world is remote, distributed, digital, and the future is already here now. So I don't see it as a concern.
Let's talk about, I think this is also the part that could be used, some of the what could be useful for other people sort of listening in. What would you say are sort of like the biggest lessons from Andela in terms of running a team full remote? What are the things, what works and what are the things to watch out for?
Yes, so many lessons. Again, it was a very interesting transition. Like I said, we've always worked sort of remotely, and we've always had maybe about 50% of our employees working remotely. And in fact, entire countries, Egypt and Ghana, when we started, were fully remote, right? But transitioning everyone, 1,000 plus people, fully remote was an interesting one. And we did this in roughly 3 weeks to 1 month. And my team, along with other teams, were responsible for this. What are the things that are important to note? So remote work, I'd like to say this, remote work isn't just about working from your bed, because I think that's the part that everybody loves. Oh, remote work, I can just work from my bed. That's the part people like to hear. There are investments in processes, workflows, technology, and change management that go into making remote work work. And so for us as Andela, in terms of change management, that's really key. I remember when the lockdown started, one of my relatives called me, and he's a very senior person in one of the biggest infrastructure companies, and they needed people to work remote. And he called me, he's like, how are you guys doing this? How are you, how are you making it happen? Change management is really key. We were fortunate in that Andelans are resilient, they're adaptable. So that was relatively smooth in terms of the mindset, because there's a mindset thing to it. In terms of processes, operations, and flows, I'll just give you some tips. It's not something you just jump into. The same way, and I'll give a personal example of what we did. Even though we had experience in working remotely, it's like you don't wait for a fire before you know what to do. You do a fire drill. And so one of the things we did was we did a remote drill. So we had a 1 day, single day or 2 days that we had this was before lockdown, before we had to go fully remote. Everyone worked remote. And so we use that to observe, to get data, to note issues with infrastructure, comms, internet, workspaces, all the things that, that we would need to further prepare for. So that test is something that I would advise, people do and learn from. We had a command center, literal command center, where we were noting, cross-functional, tracking every single issue that came up so that we could use this data to come up with solutions. We did heat mapping. Where are all our employees located? And so what infrastructure needed to be in place in those locations to make their work easier? Like I said, investments. We had to look at providing a remote stipend of some sort to subsidize, how people would work. So these are just some of the things that Andela had to do. And I'm happy to say that it's been successful. We've been able to work successfully remote. It's not perfect. Obviously, we still have some things, but, as the challenges come up, we face them.
Okay. I think that's good. I think I want to talk about sort of your other lessons from thinking through this year's crisis. What have been sort of the most critical things for you to move quickly on? The decision to full remote was definitely a pretty big one. But what else have been sort of the big sort of key decisions that you've had to take as a business? And then whatever you want to generalize from that for other CEOs and founders and leaders to think about.
Okay. So I will use Andela as a case in point, but I think this is more general. This is something that I've really been interested in, and I've, been observing different businesses and watching things. The first thing is, and this is not even part of it, but I just want to say this, hope is really, really important.
Okay.
Empathy, optimism, it's really important as a leader. You need to have that, right? And that is, it's really important. I can't stress that enough. However, hope is not a strategy.
Okay.
It isn't. And
I love that one. I know that one.
Yeah. And I think maybe even in this part of the world, a lot of people are just, we're very optimistic and, just like, oh, all will be well and all of that. And that's important, but hope is not a strategy. So you do need to have a strategy. Now you execute that strategy with empathy and optimism. That's where hope comes in, but you have to have a strategy. And so that's one of the things that, Andela did. So even before, I'm talking about the remote and all of that, even before lockdown, it was like, what is our strategy? Hey, we need to survive as a business, but this is coming up now. What is the strategy? I like to look at 4 levers that I think that people should look at. And when I say people, I'm talking about established businesses, startups. So this is not just tech, startups, entrepreneurs, and even individuals. Cash, capital, costs, customers. So 4 C's. First thing is know your cash position. That's the first thing. You need to stop. And it's amazing how many people don't know this. Even individuals, everybody went into this crisis. I'm not sure people sat down and said, how much cash do I have? And why is this important? I like the way Yusuf, MD of Veraki, said. He says, cash is not what you expect to receive. It's not what your customers are going to pay you. It is what you actually have in the bank. This is important because Sequoia Capital put it this way. Everybody says cash is king. They put it this way. They said cash is God. I don't think it's that extreme, but your business will not die because your product, you didn't have the best idea or the best product. Your business will die if you do not have cash.
Yeah.
You need to know your cash position. You can't go anywhere if you don't know where you are. So that's the first step. And that's one of the things that we looked at in Andela. What is our cash burn? And what does it have to be for us to not just survive COVID, but to have 18 months of run, to be sure that by Q1 2022, we are alive and well. Cash. So what's your cash burn? Second thing is capital. You need to, for the crisis, look at your capital. You need sufficient capital to last you through at least 2021. That's like 18 months. I know this is a bit, controversial.
Yeah,
Yes.
I am laughing. As a business owner, I am laughing at 18 months of running expenses.
I know. So that's the ideal thing. But I'll tell you the corollary to that, and if you don't have capital. But for startups out there, particularly, I mean, the bad news is that a lot of investors are taking a watch and wait approach due to the much talk about looming economic recession. I say much talk about because I don't think anyone really knows the future. We're all postulating, right? So many angel investors who've taken a hit in the stock market are not investing. VCs are working with their current portfolio companies to make sure they stay afloat. So that's the bad news. The good news is while investors don't have to utilize their funds now, venture funds in particular have to be used within a certain period, or they have to give it back to their partners, which they don't like to do. So, and globally, as of 2019, VCs globally are sitting on a lot of capital. I can't remember the figure, about 189 billion or something. I can't remember, which must be put to use, right? So the good news is that there's still capital, there's still money, there's still investment that needs to be made. Obviously, VCs in particular are very, very choosy about who they're investing in, and there's certain questions they will be asking. I can give you 4 key questions that if you're a startup or anyone looking for capital, you need to be able to say yes to in this period if you're going to get. Has your company closed new sales? Are your existing customers, renewing subscriptions? Are they buying more? And has all of this happened in the last 3 months? If you can answer yes, there's a likelihood you can still raise money, right? Now, moving away from capital. So let's assume we can't raise capital and all of that. You may not be able to control the macroeconomy. Nobody can. But something that's within the control of every business, startup, entrepreneur, individual is costs. So that's the third C, and that's what we looked at as Andela, and every business obviously should be looking at, and every individual. What are your costs? And when I say look at costs, look hard at costs and make cuts, cutting costs. And let me make it graphic. The way Sequoia Capital, they did a study on the 2008-2009 economic recession, and those, the companies that survived, and found out that a lot of the companies that made large cuts swiftly at the beginning survived, and those who waited or who did sort of staggered things, many didn't survive, right? And so this is not me. Sequoia Capital saying cuts is not cutting 10% of your costs in your business. Cuts is 30% reduction in the costs of your business. So you need to make those hard cuts proactively. People would ask, what kind of cuts should we be making? Again, there's a whole list of things. This is just opinion, but there are about 9 things you should be looking at if you haven't already looked at it. First thing people would tell you is professional services, consultants, things that if you don't have, mic check, can you still hear? Next 3 months, will your business die? No, cut it. Travel, obviously, this is a no-brainer. It has cut everybody, even if you didn't want to travel. Discretionary marketing spend. And I say this with all due respect because I know I'm talking to a media company, but I say discretionary because obviously for some businesses, you need the media, you need that. If that's the core of your business, then it would be silly of you to cut that. But where it's discretionary, you need to work with your partners to look for cheaper ways of doing it or cut it for now. At some point, you subscribe to Amazon Prime, and then you subscribe to this app that will help you check your bandwidth, and then you subscribe to different subscriptions. You need to go back as a business owner and go and look at all those software. What do I really need now? Because those things are taken out of your cash. And so we had to do that in Andela. And we found out that we had a lot of software that maybe it was required when we even had a different model. I had 100 people using it, and you don't even have those 100 people there anymore. Yet it's a recurring cost. So software, you need to look at that. Hiring, freeze hiring, unless it's mission critical. Eliminate roles. Like I said, if you will not die in the next 3 months without those roles, freeze hiring. Facilities, physical infrastructure. A number of businesses can see that not everyone, has to work in the office, and sometimes you don't need all of the facilities that you have. So you need to look at that. There's some things that we paid for the year or for a quarter, and you've paid in lump sum. Maybe you should go and renegotiate. And then with facilities, what I'd like to really harp on is the associated costs with facilities. So sometimes you just think about the rent. Oh, well, I paid the rent, even though, there's COVID and all that, there's nothing we can do about that. But there are associated costs that people don't go back to look at. You've paid for cleaning. If no one is in the building, or, do you really need all of the cleaning? Security. If you're not fully operational and everyone is not there, do you need as much security? And you're paying for these things. Power. There are people that are still built. I remember it was Omowale Johnson that said this, that her office was locked for 4 months or 3 months, because of COVID, and she still got the same code distribution bill, So, so you need to look at all those things.
About this.
Yeah.
Because cost cutting is critical, and I think this is all very valuable and very practical. How long does it last? How long do you cut for? I particularly like the Sequoia, particularly in relation to the Sequoia question, which is you cut early, you cut deep. How long do you maintain these costs? These cuts, because there are optimal and suboptimal levels of exposure. You might not die in 3 months if you don't have some costs in your business, but in the long term, you are hurting your mission, or some cuts will hurt your mission. Yeah. Very
good question. So it's not about trimming.
So my question to you is, how long do you? Yeah.
The truth is, there's no answer to that question, because I don't think there's one answer to that question. It's your business, and then pile up the costs as things, open up, as you need them, as you see that, okay, these things are now critical, than not to do that. And then your business, just literally goes down. And by the time that you realize that, oh, maybe I should have cut this cost, it's too late. Because remember what we said, your business will die without cash. So this is all about cash, right? You need to be alive to make an impact or to do anything with your business. So this is really about staying alive, first of all. So I don't think there's any timing I can say. Like I said, people would say you want to make sure that you can have the runway for 18 months, but I really don't have any prescriptions then, to be honest.
Okay, all right. There was one more, you were going to talk about customers. So you said costs. Yeah, the last of your 4 C's was customers.
And the customers is actually even probably the most important. One of the first things, so talking about Andela again and other businesses, one of the first things that became obvious to many businesses at the beginning of the crisis, COVID pandemic, may remain true, is cost of new customer acquisition would be too high. In fact, you may not be able to get new customers. And so you need to double down on your existing customers. I'm not saying anything new, I think, but it's surprising a lot of people don't think about this. So your existing customers, you need to relook your product offerings and sort of align it to what your customers are going through. This, I was talking with my husband yesterday, and it's funny how a lot of businesses are not, I don't think they're thinking proactively. They're not thinking about their customers and the fact that, because of this pandemic, my customers' model might change. So what should I be changing in my product to proactively meet their new model? Everyone is just thinking of what I need to change in my business to survive. But if you change, if you think about what your customers, because your revenue is coming from your customers, so if you think of what they are going to change, how this affects their business, then you can quickly change your product offerings. I was trying to get, I was talking with you, Tomiwa, yesterday about a simple example of we went remote. We had businesses who were, providing services like, inverters and all of that. Now, the proactive thing for those businesses to do would be thinking, okay, we're seeing signs, there's this lockdown, these people are working remotely, right? How can we change our product offerings to meet that? How can we come up, their employees are still working in places where they would need power and they have power issues. Can we come up with, give product offerings or payment plans where people can get, the small size inverters, pay over a certain, and then just try and do that so that they still retain our business and they still continue in business. I don't know if this is convoluted, but anyway, the point I'm saying is that relook product offerings, double down on existing customers, and of course the popular people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So you need to work directly with your customers to try and ease the pain. To be clear, you're giving discounts, you're giving credits, but think of it as an investment, because if you're able to keep those customers, at least you have money coming in and they are more likely to stay on with you after the pandemic because of, that position. So, and then, so the last thing again is also think innovatively. So if you have to shift some of all your business to be a part of the solution to COVID-19, do that. And we have all the examples. Manufacturers that shifted from producing clothes because nobody's going out and wearing clothes to producing masks. GE started producing ventilators. If you're in an industry that's particularly hit, like the hospitality industry, I like what Airbnb did. Okay, nobody is going, staying in hotels. They converted that service to medical personnel who have to actually be quarantined from their family, and people who need to isolate and need somewhere to stay, So those are thinking about crisis.
Fantastic. I think of like lesson in the middle of this about sort of practical steps for sort of leaders, business leaders today. I'm going to jump into some of the questions that people sent ahead of this session, and then I'll also start to read out some of the questions from the Q&A button on here. So one of the first ones is, you've changed model now, but this new model, there's a couple of companies that have been sort of in a similar space. One of them is TechCabal, from which one of your sort of fairly recent execs came. How do you sort of differentiate yourself from those guys in the market? Why does Silicon Valley decide to hire from Andela rather than one of those?
Okay, that's a great question. So what you would see with a number of those companies, TechCabal has done very well, is their model has been focused on sort of short-term gigs, right? So they have their contractors who do the short-term gigs, with the companies. One of the things that we have always done is have long-term engagements. And the advantage of that, which is what we want to continue to do, is to build that long-term relationship with the customer. The customers appreciate that because then you're growing with their business and they're not having to, constantly look for new contractors for every project and, stuff they want to do. So that focus on long-term engagement is one of the key value propositions that we bring. And that helps not just the customers, but even the engineers who work there, because again, with short-term gigs, you're constantly relearning, or you learn a certain skill. Imagine you're on with a client or customer for a whole year. You can actually grow your career. And growing your career is not just about the work you're doing; it's about the team you're with. So when you're with a team for a year, the things you're learning, the things that you're building off of each other. To your earlier point about like dev shop, so it mixes the advantages of a dev shop with the liquidity of talent of the TechCabal. So that's one of the things that I think Andela brings to the table versus a number of all the other talent, matching agencies.
Fantastic. Here's another question. It's sort of how difficult was it to take the decision to lay off and pivot and to actually execute those changes? So I can talk about
difficult
that.
Is an understatement. Difficult. It's one of the hardest things to do. And I think it's even harder because these were not people that had to leave because of performance or conduct or anything. These were brilliant people, right? So I think it even made it tougher for every time we've had to, do that. Maybe the model has changed. We're remote now. And so certain people, let me talk about my area, global operations, managing all the operations, the facilities, all of that. Without that, certain people just don't, they're brilliant, but there's no work for them to do, right? And such people have to go. So very tough, very, very difficult. I would continue to say that. But that's leadership, and that's that's running a business. You have to take difficult decisions.
Talk about big things for the audience to keep in mind. If you're going to do a big layoff, if you have to switch strategies, big things to keep in mind and sort of informing your team.
No, say that question again.
So what are the lessons you would share for people who've got to do a pivot, who've got to do a big sort of change like that?
Lessons. Well, you want to remain as humane as possible, but I need to be honest. And I don't know if people, I need to be honest about this because, people say it in theory, oh, you need to be humane. The truth is, no matter how humane you are, you're doing something that will definitely, in quotes, hurt someone. And you need to face that reality. So I would say be as humane as you possibly can, but realize that people will still be hurt. And so just And so you need to also take care of yourself because it's also a psychological thing. You need to take care of yourself and make sure you don't just become deadened to things that have to happen because you've done it so many times. So that's one lesson. And then just, like I said, being humane is not just emotionally. Try and put things in place. So for us as Andela, I'd like to say that we did it as best as we could in terms of packages that we're giving people, in terms of help, in terms of health insurance, in terms of, helping finding something new, finding a new job, referrals, just formal and informal. You will find Andelans everywhere giving recommendations, referring people on LinkedIn, just simple things like that. So that's part of being humane. It's practical things that we do. What do you give people, and all of that.
Okay, I'm going to jump into a question that actually, super topical, and I've got a couple of questions relating to this, which is the communication around that. And I will say, this has been challenging for Andela, at least from my perspective, from this side of the desk. There's a lot, and I'm sure you'd have seen it. There's a big article that came out yesterday, or an article by Big Technology. And I've got probably 3 or 4 questions in the Q&A section that kind of relates to this. So I want to ask about just communications and proactive communication with the public, with the press. Internally, would you guys say you're getting it right? Where would you say you're getting it wrong? I will get into some of the specific questions, but just thinking about the way you've communicated, and kind of over the last 18, 24 months, as a lot of these big changes have happened.
Yeah.
How do you guys perceive it? Are you not communicating enough? Are you communicating frequently enough? Is it the press's business, what they put out there, and whether they get it right or wrong?
Okay. It's a good question. I think it would be fully and presumptuous of me to say that we've gotten it right. That's not true. I think we've gotten some things right, but we learn every day. So definitely we could do better. We could have done better with communication. We keep trying. We have people that we work with closely, both internally and externally, to try and manage that. But at the end of the day, I think sometimes you also think about it that where's the fine line, right? Between actually focusing on your business and focusing on what everyone else thinks.
Okay.
Because the more energy and resources you put into what everyone else thinks, the less you're putting into what you're actually doing, right? And if I should go back to history, and I know Shani used to say this, the first 2 years of Andela, go and look for it, look for communication, look for everything. You won't find anything. Okay. The early days, there was nothing because Andela was heads down, busy, trying to do what they were doing. And eventually, when we got that right, when it's everything, people started communicating for us. Look at a lot of the communication that happens. People do it for us because when people see results, when people see what you've done, then, you have advocates, you have people, you have ambassadors. But if you don't focus on doing what you're doing well and you mess it up, then even those people that were talking about you're going to have 100 more talking about how you bungled up. So it's a fine line. We're not perfect in it. We're trying. We have agencies like Wimbert, working with us, doing a great job, and internally as well. I'm here talking, trying to, educate people on what we are and all of that. I guess we can do better, but yeah.
I have a question here. Actually, this is from Shani, actually, which is that sort of previously Andela was very active online in the tech ecosystem, but it feels like you've become more introverted recently. Is that a deliberate choice? Is that actually happening, or?
Hi, Shani. Yes, Shani is my main guy. Okay. So Shani, I'm surprised you're asking that question. You know the answer, but I think it's a mix of both. In terms of, because you see, a lot of the flack we're getting right now is because there was a lot of noise, right, in the ecosystem about what we're doing. So we put ourselves out there. And once you put yourself out there, you either continue putting yourself out there, or when you don't, everybody's looking at you. Okay. To the article you talked about. In fact, I was wondering the name of the article. I was like, did they get that from TechCabal? Anyway, but the name of, but first production, and it's about Andela.
Okay.
So in a way, it's maybe we should just focus on our business, because to be honest, a lot of people have done the things we're doing in terms of tweaking businesses. 135 people were laid off in Andela, right? That's across all our locations, including US. Yeah. That's 10%. In Nigeria specifically, where I am, that's 30 people out of almost 700 people. Those 30 people are important. But I'm just trying to say that when you look at it, their businesses, Uber laid off 5,000 people. They're like, businesses are doing this. You don't hear anything, right?
Uber
but we've always
as central here as Andela.
Yeah, but even businesses are central because we've always been, and I'm proud of that. We've always been out there in the ecosystem. People know us. My point is that the disadvantage of that is every step you take, every good thing you do, everything that looks like, is it a mistake? It's always out there. So to Shani's question, is it deliberate? I think there's a bit of being deliberate about not, being out there in the ecosystem so much in the future and more focusing on let's get this business, to work the way we want it to be. Let's do more of what we're doing. Let's connect talent opportunity. When we do millions of that, the world will applaud us. So yeah.
Okay. I'm going to keep on this conversation just around sort of some of the questions people have asked. So this is from the Big Tech article, and there's a question, about speaking to the perception by some former and present Andelans that the company has overplayed how well Andelans are paid. How do you respond to that? What's your thinking about that?
I don't even know how to respond to that, to be honest, because because again, when people say the company has overplayed, I really don't know, and I stand to be corrected. I don't know that the company. I don't know who's the company. Me, the leaders. I don't know that anybody has ever gone out there to say, "Oh, this is the salary that we pay." And this is now people will always make and when I say people, maybe some journalists will always sort of make their own conclusions based on what they hear, and sometimes you can't control that. So I don't know how to react to that. It was, and I understand where I'm an employee as well. I understand where our Andelans and the engineers were coming from in terms of that, because when people think you're paid this huge amount, and that's not exactly what it is. Even if you're paid fairly, if people think it's more than what you're paid, it puts a lot of spotlight on you and all of that. So I understand where they're coming from, but I don't believe that Andela has gone out deliberately to say we pay something that we do not pay. I think people put dots together and,
I'm going to ask a question about sort of openness to the press, because it's a huge conversation in a number of groups I'm in, and also openness to people speaking within the ecosystem. Something that's interesting to me about the Big Tech article is it's written by, I think it's an American journalist, definitely somebody outside of the African tech ecosystem. And I know that one of the sort of key issues, and this is me speaking as sort of a press publication, is getting executives to speak honestly about sort of key information, whether it's how much people are paid, to business model challenges. And I appreciate the fact that you are on here right now, sort of, and doing this very in front of over 100 people. But it's an issue, and I think there's a perspective I hear often from tech executives that the press doesn't get it right. And the perspective that I will say from the press angle is that executives won't talk. They penalize and fire people for talking. And I find that it's an ecosystem that's very, very closed-mouthed. And it's closed-mouthed because people, and I have to say, frequently I find that not just rank and file feels scared, even execs to me come off as scared to talk about what is happening in their businesses. Do you have a response to that? How do you?
That's an interesting one. I think I can speak to both sides of the coin.
Okay.
I'll speak as a leader. I'm always happy to speak. You called me for this, and I'm here. I try to.
And kudos.
But I think there's the fear of being misunderstood, and it's a very real and true thing for anyone who is not just in tech. Anyone who's a public figure. Celebrities will tell you this. Why do celebrities not want to talk to people sometimes? It's because there's the fear of being misunderstood. You tell the truth and it's used against you, right? You say things as they are. People still, and you must be honest, you're in the media. What sells? Saying just good stuff and all of that probably doesn't catch people's attention. So you find, and I'm not saying you do that, but you do find some people in the media, they'll just put one title Andela, you really have to understand that people don't want to be misunderstood. And like I said, if your business, if what you're going to be appraised on, what you're really going to be judged on is the success of your business. The less time you spend on, going in and out or being misunderstood or not being misunderstood, actually do the work. It seems like it's better. So I think that's maybe why a lot of executives are like, you know what, let me just do my work. When I go and talk, it's going to be misconstrued. When I do the work and we're successful and we're out there, it will be obvious. So that's where I think they're coming from. Having said that, you are right, because what it comes across is like people are hiding things. People don't want to tell the truth. People are afraid. I don't know about firing and penalizing. For Andela, I mean, that was one of the things I loved and love about Andela. Coming in, Andela is somewhere where people can speak. I mean, it doesn't mean that everything you say will be done, because there will be anarchy if everyone's suggestion is implemented. I'm not happy about this. This is how I feel and all that. I think that's what we have in Andela. I don't know if it's the same everywhere. Yeah,
I think it's interesting. It's an ongoing. I mean, if I think about recently, there was a Tizeti sort of case around the rape, not the sexual harassment accusation. Not rape, but sexual harassment accusation. And I know that the TechCabal editorial team, and I don't sit in editorial primarily. I think this is about as much editorial work as I do with these interviews. I did a lot of work trying to get people to speak within the ecosystem and speak to their own experiences, speak to what it is they've seen or they've experienced. Pretty much no one willing to speak on the record. And if a bunch of other publications have got people to speak and we were the only ones who didn't, then I might say, oh, it's something with our team or we're not doing the work. But it is curious to me on an issue that people are that passionate about, that people are that, and I do think there's some introspection that needs to happen among tech leaders, within our ecosystem about what is the environment that we're breeding, because even to build the companies of the futures, what are the lessons people are learning? Who's sharing? And I mean, so many of these business models are experimental. Yeah. And so you're doing the experiment, you're not sharing your learnings. People are going to raise $100 million and attempt the same experiments that other people have already sort of failed from, rather than sharing, learning from what it is that they've done. I mean, it's like all the postmortems of Congo Junio are coming out now after 2 dozen startups have already repeated their mistakes and sort of like errors. So it's a critical component, and I don't know that there's much of a question in this last thing I said, but putting that out.
I do have something to say. It's not a question, and I totally agree with you. It is something, if I like the way you've put it, because when we don't speak about the learnings and the things we got wrong and things we got right, we basically allow others to, copy that and make the same mistakes. So that's a very important point that you raised, and I guess I will try to do my part as a leader. The thing I wanted to say though is that I don't know that it's just a tech thing. I think it's a human thing. Look at the Me Too movement. Do you know how many years it took for that to actually become something? Yeah. It had gone on for years. It's a human thing. People are afraid to speak up, even sometimes just from perceived. So they may not actually be penalized, but just the perception that I will be penalized or I will be, So I think it's a human thing. And you're right. We just need to, as humans, encourage that, because the only way we actually learn and grow is when people are open about mistakes and about things that have gone wrong. And, we can pick from that. So I think I totally agree with you on that.
Fantastic. I think the last question that relates to this particular topic and that particular article that I'm just going to ask about is, there was something in there about, and after this we'll move on from here, but something in there about sort of Andela being perceived as a plantation, loaded word, and developers are stretched to produce value for the company, but they're not being well rewarded. Have you guys had a conversation about that, or about, I think Jeremy's response was in the article, but internally, how is that perceived? Is that fair criticism? Is it ridiculous?
To be honest, and this is me, my personal opinion. How do they say it on Twitter? My opinions, they represent me.
In my humble opinion.
In my own, I won't represent them.
But yes, okay.
I was actually I was shocked. It was the first time. At least the article came out yesterday. I was shocked. I'd never heard that. And the number of people that I've asked in the company had never heard about that. I know Jeremy was really, really hurt about that. And we are, as a company, going to, talk about that. I was hurt because, my opinion, there are two sides to every coin. I do think, and I'm going to say this, and I'm just going to say this because I like you said, speak your truth. I think sometimes a lot of us, human beings, first of all, maybe Africans, we need to get away from entitlement.
Okay.
Yes. We need to get away from an entitlement mentality. The reason is because, you see, when we have that, entitlement mentality is not even good, but it doesn't even do any good for us as a country, as a continent, because all you will hear is people say, if you go to Africa, you are nice, you are doing things, they will just, they will still revolt, they will do this. Go there with a whip. That is when they will listen to you. I'm just saying all of this.
Yeah.
I don't think that's true, but that's the way sometimes it comes off when people are entitled. Why do I say this? Let's look at this. And I'm not saying this because I'm a leader in Andela. Andela is not perfect. No company is. So I think there are things that Andela, as a company, we need to work on. But when you think about it, see some of the things that were in the article. And I like that the article actually pointed that out. You have people on the bench. On the bench means we're not able to place you. You're not working. Yep. You're not generating revenue. And you're on the bench for 18 months. And you're still paid a salary. And you're still giving food. And you're still giving accommodation.
Yeah.
Why would you look at that and say you are on a plantation? That doesn't make sense to me. Now, of course, nobody wants to be on the bench, which eventually was why some of the decisions were taken, because it's not even good for people on the bench. They're not doing the work that they actually wanted to do. But my point is that you're not doing that work. It hurts you, but it's also hurting the business. And yet the business says, I will still continue to take care of you because you are my people, right? So I think we need to look at it from every side. I found that comment, plantation, I found it very hurtful.
I've got a couple of questions which kind of go back into sort of broader sort of strategies for companies thinking about survival in this time, thinking about how to thrive in this time. One question is, what non-tech strategies can SMEs leverage for survival and growth at this time?
Non-tech.
Non-tech. Looking forward.
Okay. I think it's kind of related to what I'd said earlier. And the things I mentioned, the 4 C's, surprisingly, none of them is even technology. If you're looking at those things, innovation is not necessarily technology. I will, however, say that you can't ignore technology. So if you're a startup, you need to, because technology is even less of an industry now. Technology is not an industry. Every industry has technology and is running on technology. You get what I mean? So I think I wouldn't be doing you any favors by saying, okay, just ignore technology. You really do need to look at technology and see how it fits in to your business. And that's where innovation comes in. It may not be that obvious. That's where the thinking goes in. And in fact, that's a good thing about a crisis and COVID. Maybe if you can't sell and you can't do things, then at least you can think, sit down, come up with new products. 2008, 2009 economic crisis, recession was when a number of the businesses that are really big today came out. WhatsApp, all of that was in 2008, in the middle of the recession. So, it's the time to innovate. It may not always be technology. It may just be a different way of doing what you already do. I give the example of Airbnb that is, pivoting from, okay, we can't provide houses to normal people going on travels and tourists. All the medical personnel that need to be quarantined, there are thousands of them. Let's do that. Let's charge for that. So it's about innovation, not necessarily technology. And watch your costs so that you stay alive.
Fair enough. I think we're coming to the end of this. And so I guess, are there any other key things that you'd want to say? Just talking to the tech ecosystem, talking to sort of business leaders, is there anything you think we haven't touched on that's sort of important for them to take away?
I think one thing to take away is no one, and Tommy and I joked about this, the truth is no one really knows the future. Yeah. And I would really like to just tell everyone not to panic too much. What I said we spoke about was no one was able to predict COVID. And so if no one was with all the expertise and everything, was able to predict COVID, I would say you should also take all the postulations and predictions with a grain of salt. Don't get, depressed about this looming economic recession and all of that, because really no one knows the future. The other thing that, this is my opinion as well, is I think things are going to recover much faster than we think. The reason I say this is the same way things deteriorated fast. We're in what we call the jet age, but I also think the good things happen faster. So when we're looking at the things that we have now, even in terms of whether it's coming up with the tools and structures. So I think the recovery will be faster. So maybe just to go over again what I said. First thing is, please be real. Hope is not a strategy. You need to have a strategy, which means you need to sit down and say, where am I? Where am I with cash as a business? Because that's the lifeblood of any business. Plan, but allow for flexibility, because nobody knows the future. Everybody says, now everything is so uncertain. Guess what? Things were still uncertain last year. Nobody, as far as I know, knows the future. So it's a fallacy to think that things are uncertain now. They have always been uncertain. So you can plan, but be flexible. And then care for your customers, because that's where your revenue is coming from. So just don't think only about your business, be thinking about your customers. That's what will give you innovation and keep you alive.
Fantastic. Thank you so very much.
One last thing. Customers and employees. I haven't actually mentioned that a lot in this, because I guess I thought it was implied, but I think I should mention that employees. And when I say employees, again, to keep it real, it's not all your employees. It's not. That's what everybody tell you, all your people are there. I don't like to lie. It's not all your employees. Yeah. One of the things that COVID has even shown many people is it has shown the people that are working and the people that are not working. Because you now find out that, I've not even seen this guy for 2 months, and the business is still going on, and we have not missed the person. So it's not, but there are key employees. There are employees that are working. There are employees that are the lifeblood of your business. You need to identify them. You need to appreciate them. You need to give them hope. So that you can keep them and you guys can grow together.
Okay. Fantastic. I think that's a good note to sort of pull this to a close on. Thank you so much for coming and answering all our questions, tough and, and otherwise. Thank you, everyone who's joined us. We've tried to cover as many of the questions as possible. There are quite a few that were sent in ahead of time that we couldn't do as much justice as I'd like, but we do try to end this on time.
Thank you for having me, and thank you, everyone that joined. Your support means a lot.
Fantastic. Take care.